Today is June 29th edition of Back Roads of Illinois. We were Central Illinois Agriculture Source. We were glad you're here on Back Roads of Illinois. Acreage Report, Beef Demand, the 4th of July. We were going to talk about the acreage report on today from the Department of Agricultural. In the Midwest, it's probably going to be corn and beans for the report from the Department of Agriculture for today at 11 a.m. Central Time. Beef demand is pretty tight for right now. The economy is lacking in central demand for right now with the cattle markets. According by the American Farm Bureau Federation, the 4th of July dinner basket of the American Farm Bureau Federation. Food costs is increasing in the grocery shopping for the holiday weekend, including the beef demand. The beef demand is pretty tight than previously years because the cattle herd is shrinking right now alongside with the corn markets. Happy 4th of July to you guys from us on Back Roads of Illinois. We're not going to be here for next week. Happy 4th of July. We're having our special guest for today is Carah Hart from Brownfield Ag Network and the NFB president on Back Roads of Illinois with her. We were talking with the NFB president, Carah Hart. Do you following the farm bill for right now? Because it's important for right now with the radio situation in Washington, D.C. between the rural areas and the Midwest. This is your agricultural news and markets update minute. The corn progress in the Midwest. It's up at 5% from the average, but with the weather in Iowa and Minnesota, South Dakota has been a lot of heavy rain in Iowa and Minnesota. The United States Department of Agriculture will be released on the acreage report on this morning at 11 Central Time. Next week is the holiday week. The markets will be closed on next Thursday. It will be back on Friday morning at 8:30 Central Time. This time is for your agricultural commodity markets update on Back Roads of Illinois. Corn futures finished in up 7 to 8 cents. Soybean futures finished in up 9 to 10 cents. Wheat futures finished in up 3 to 4 cents. Includes in Kansas City wheat and Chicago wheat, Minneapolis wheat futures. Now that we are going to talk about the livestock market for today on this afternoon. Cattle futures finished in up 3 to 4 cents per weight. Feeder cattle finished in down 2 to 3 cents. Lean hogs finished in down 7 to 9 cents. Texas crude oil finished in down 3 to 4 cents. Dow Jones finished in up 2 points. S&P 500 finished in up 10 points. We were coming back with a present. Today, we were joining with Carah Hart from Brownfield Ag Network, and she is the president of the National Farm Broadcasters Association. Welcome to the show. How are you, Carah?
I'm good, Cesar. Thanks for having me as a guest. I hope you are well too.
Let's start with our conversation about the updates on the National Farm Broadcasters Association.
Sure, Cesar. What do you want to know?
What is the top priority for the NFB for this time?
Cesar, that's a really good question. And for those who are members of NAFB, about a month ago, you and I are chatting at the end of June right now. About a month ago, we hired a new executive director. So, our top priority for NAFB at this time has, now that we have him hired, has been getting him onboarded, getting him more familiar with NAFB. Gardner Hatch is the new executive director, and he's been an NAFB member for a while, so he is familiar with NAFB. But like in any job, you get familiar with the inner workings of the association a little deeper when it's your job to help lead and guide the association. So now that we have him hired, it's getting him through the onboarding process and continuing to advance the business of NAFB. So at present, that is the current top priority for the NAFB. Now, there are many other things that we're focused on too, including the AM radio issue, so many other inner workings pieces too of the association. So it's an exciting time for NAFB with the hiring of the new executive director and so many things that are on the horizon.
What is the annual update on this organization?
I'm still not quite sure exactly what you're asking, but maybe you're asking about the upcoming NAFB convention. And let me pull up those details for you. I can talk about NAFB convention. Now, the upcoming convention, we always have the NAFB convention at the Westin Crown Center in Kansas City, Missouri, and that's the same this year. The 81st NAFB convention will be November 13th through the 15th, and we look forward to seeing everyone. Part of the fun of serving as an officer in the NAFB is helping plan this really big event. And serving as president, my time to help plan the event was last year. And so President-elect Jeff Nally has been very busy working with the NAFB staff and so many others on making sure that this is going to be a stellar event. I'm very excited to see the finished event itself. And I think we can stay tuned probably for more details, including the theme. So keep your eyes peeled. Members and those who are interested in attending the convention should see more details on that later this summer, early fall.
Carah, how does the radio situation in Washington, D.C. for right now? Could you explain to our listeners?
Sure. So I think big picture, Cesar, the AM radio legislation that NAFB has been keeping an eye on in Washington, D.C., there was a hearing in one of the committees in early May, and that was while the NAFB was in Washington, D.C. for Washington Watch. So we had some members attend that meeting. And since then, there hasn't been much movement on the AM radio legislation. And I think part of that is just due to the holdup in Washington, D.C. If any one of your listeners out there tunes into politics, they are well aware that Congress at times has challenges getting deadlines met, getting their work done, and it's also an election year. There's so much that's on the plate for lawmakers. I'm not sure we'll see much action on the AM radio legislation moving forward, but we'll just have to wait and see what lawmakers do. Like I said, it's an election year. Usually we have a window until the end of September, early October to see movement in Congress. And then once the election season is over, lawmakers come back in December. We're hoping they use that time for the Farm Bill, and then if they need to do some appropriations work. So it might be 2025 until we see more movement on the AM radio legislation.
Who is the lawmakers' support for the bill?
That's a really good question, Cesar. And I don't have the exact breakout for that in front of me at this time. I do know that there is good support for the legislation. I do know that lawmakers have an interest in actually getting this done as long as they had the floor time to be able to address this. So we'll just have to wait and see. We'll just have to wait and see how lawmakers advance this going forward.
Can we get involved with the NFB for with the policymakers in Washington, D.C.?
Well, so the thing about NAFB, most anyone can get involved with NAFB. In fact, we welcome new members. If you're part of ag communications, farm broadcasting, we'd love to have you sign up as a member. And you can go to the NAFB website, nafb.com, and go to the membership tab on the homepage, and you can see the membership applications. If you are in the agriculture industry, and you are more like in an ag communications or an ag company role, that would be an Allied Industry Council membership. Broadcast Council members, of course, are the radio and TV, and there are some podcast members of the association. And you have to meet certain criteria to be a Broadcast Council and Allied Industry Council member. The same with Management and Sales Council. There's student members too. Cesar, I think you're a student member, right? And then there's also a transfer membership application too. So if you want to become a member of NAFB, that's the best way to start. Go to our website, check it out, and you'll fill out the application, and you'll just have to go through an approval process. And that takes a little bit of time, but it shouldn't take long. And then we'll be able to work with you on that membership. So when it comes to policy in Washington, D.C., the NAFB is a nonprofit, and typically we don't do lobbying work with NAFB. So that has been, I think, kind of a delicate balance with this AM radio issue. So if you're joining NAFB, I think there is value in a group of us coming together to stand for issues that affect our industry, including this AM radio issue. I think that's really important. We have to be careful, how much say we're having in some of this just because of our nonprofit status. So we just have to be careful in that. So NAFB also once a year goes to Washington, D.C. for our annual Washington Watch event, and that happened in early May this year. And typically that's a time when our Broadcast Council members get a chance to have radio interviews, TV interviews with lawmakers. And most of the time that is for stories. It's for covering the news that we follow on a day-to-day basis as farm broadcasters. So of course, this year, the Farm Bill was a really big topic. And I hope that answers your question, Cesar. Let me know if I need to get specific.
How about the students' members? They can join as well.
They can. And it is a really cool opportunity for anyone that is in, I believe, college age, to be able to sign up for an NAFB student membership. You really get a chance to be involved as an NAFB member. You can come to the NAFB convention, you can participate in some of the activities, and it's really a great networking opportunity. I joined as a student member when I was in college, and I really appreciated that networking experience. I just thought it was a really great way to get involved. And Cesar, I really hope you've been enjoying your student membership as well.
Is there anything else we'd be telling our listeners about the NFB?
I would just like to say what an honor it is to be able to represent the many NAFB members that we have in this association. What a great group. I'm so passionate about this industry, and very excited to see where the future of it's headed. Communication's always changing. It's going to be fun to see how the broadcast industry adapts and continues to grow moving forward. And we're doing great things. So if you're not a member of NAFB, I would again encourage you to go to our website, nafb.com, to learn more. And if you are an NAFB member, awesome. We're glad to have you. And we look forward to seeing you at the NAFB convention coming up in November.
How did you get interested to be a farm broadcaster?
Oh, that's a good question. So that started when I was in high school, Cesar. I was in FFA, and I don't know how familiar you are with the FFA or your listeners, but the National FFA organization is a national agriculture organization, and it is in many rural communities. And I grew up in north central Missouri, and you have certain projects you do through your local chapter, and those are called supervised agricultural experience projects. And that is just a subject you focus on. You learn more about keeping records, running books and learning skills. And at the time I was in high school, in FFA, I had a hog project, and it did okay. But I had an interest in communications a little bit, and my FFA advisor knew that. And there was an internship that popped up at the local radio station in town. And my advisor said, why don't you apply for it? I think you'd be really good at it. And I thought, oh, well, supervised agriculture experience project, a new one. And I needed a new project because my hog one wasn't going very well. And then I also thought gas money. I'm like, this is great. And I went in for an interview, and I was offered the internship, and I'd never been on the radio before. I grew up in an ag community, but I had just never done any broadcasting, let alone reporting on ag news. And that whole first summer, it was rough. I learned a lot about news writing and reading the markets and local agriculture, national agriculture. And by the end of it, I was pretty good. I'd gotten a lot better than I was when I started. And I thought, I think I'd like to do this full time. And that was many years ago. And I went to college to be a farm broadcaster, to learn more about broadcasting, and got my degree at the University of Missouri in Columbia, Missouri. And then had a chance to work in public relations for a little bit right outside of college. And then I found my way back to farm broadcasting. And it's been a wonderful career path. Just a really cool opportunity. The people are great. The work is very satisfying and a lot of fun. I always have a lot of fun in my days.
Do you have any final thoughts on this segment?
Not necessarily about the NAFB. I see that you have some farm bill questions. We didn't talk much about it, other than the fact that we know that I think a lot of agriculture is waiting to see what happens with the farm bill. And at this point, as you and I chat, as it's really kind of the beginning of July, I don't know what lawmakers can get done between now and September. I visited with an ag lobbyist this week in Washington, D.C., and he was telling me he thinks that we might have another extension of the current farm bill. And perhaps this new farm bill discussion would carry over into December, what they call the lame duck session. And we'll just have to see what happens in that time. There might just be a chance this farm bill goes into 2025, but we'll see. That's a big issue that we're following. Pretty much all of agriculture is following right now, at least when it comes to ag policy. So I like ag policy. It's one of my favorite parts of doing my current job at Brownfield.
Thanks, Carah. We've been honored to have you on the show.
Thank you, Cesar, for having me. And
welcome back to Back Roads of Illinois. We were seeing the year is almost over. You can't believe it. However, the corn crop looked good in central Illinois and northern Illinois. But unfortunately, in Iowa has a bad weather over the weekend. However, you know that due to the flooding over the weekend, the corn yields are pretty interesting. You're listening to Back Roads of Illinois. Thanks to the NFB president, Carah Hart from Brownfield Ag Network in Missouri. We're running out of time on Back Roads of Illinois. You can listen to our show on YouTube and whenever you get your podcast. For Back Roads of Illinois. I'm Cesar Delgado. Have a good 4th of July week.